The purpose of the next hour or so is just to provide a bit of an insight into the safe reopening of tennis facilities across Wales and the potential commencement of one-to-one coaching. So we've been working, as you all know, with Welsh Sports Association in terms of the safe reopening of sport. We've also been working with Welsh Government Direct via the LTA as well to put forward our case and our guidance mirroring what there is in England and Scotland in terms of how we will open up tennis safely when Welsh Government allows us to do so. We're hopeful that that may well happen this Friday. I'm crossing my fingers and not wanting to curse us at all, but we're hoping that given the R8 situation and also the guidance and the position Welsh Government seem to be taking, there is an opportunity that tennis amongst some other activities will be able to open up soon. We've done this session with our clubs and coaches and took a slightly different direction, obviously, because they operate different facilities and different models. We wanted to replicate this with you guys as local authorities and parks facility operators. And obviously for you to share the information with you and then for you to ask us any questions. We do recognise that the reopening of tennis courts in parks may be problematic, and we're completely open-minded on the fact that it may be the case in some areas, specific courts or across the board, you cannot open tennis courts for a while. We're okay with that, of course. Health and safety comes first and the response to coronavirus. But we want to work with you is the key thing I would say, to open up as many tennis courts as possible and to support you through that process. And we have some things we'll present later on around court management, court booking systems that may help you do that, and something you could consider. I think the reopening of tennis does actually provide us with an opportunity to drive more participation into the sport. We're going to be one of the sports, hopefully, that is able to open up early compared to some traditional team sports. So we do see it actually as an opportunity to recruit new members and new participants to the sport. And there will be a Back to Tennis campaign, which the LTA have launched already in England and Scotland. And we'll be taking a slightly different tact in Wales, but we will be aligning to many of the key messages there, and we'll provide further information on that in due course. But our first priority is obviously to reopen the sport safely, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we do recognise it's a collective responsibility. Tennis Wales wants to work in partnership with local authorities to ensure we have a coordinated and responsible approach. We're perfectly happy, for example, to communicate when your courts are open or are not open and support that communication flow of information to people, to your communities. And also we'll be providing to you some infographics and information you can use via social media, via your communication channels, or maybe even at court physically, to just make clear the guidance and advice to users of your facilities when they reopen. We won't have all the answers today. What we're going to present to you is the approach we've put forward to Welsh Government and the Welsh Sports Association and directly, that we've had feedback on and general principles of support from. But obviously the actual reopening of tennis and what that looks like is dependent on the Welsh Government meeting tomorrow and then the announcement on Friday. So there may be slight variations depending on the direction that Welsh Government take. That we'll have to amend. But this is a guidance we've put forward, and we believe with best intention that the final situation won't vary too much from what you'll see today. I shall move the slide on, please, Pam, if we can. There we go. So on today's webinar, you've got myself, Jamie, Head of Participation. Simon Johnson, our CEO, is also with us. He's going to talk to you about opening up tennis, our new strategy, and our work with Welsh Government. We've got Pam and Luke, who are our participation development partners. They work across Wales to develop the sport. Ali Lewis, our Head of Coaching and Volunteering, and Mark Lewis, our Head of Competitions. The team are all going to take a section of the presentation to take you through some key pieces of guidance and advice from our perspective. Again, if we just move on, Pam. So these are things we're going to cover, the order of play. We're going to talk a little bit about opening up tennis, our new strategy and our liaison with Welsh Government. We're then going to look at specific guidance around the opening of tennis courts, information we developed with the LTA. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching. Now, we know that's not directly going to impact on park courts necessarily, but we wanted to provide to you an overview of the information we've provided to our coaching workforce, as there may be further down the line a need for coaches to talk to local authorities about use of park sites for coaching sessions, as we feel there may be a capacity issue on club and venue tennis courts in terms of the one-to-one coaching that we're putting forward. So that would be an individual conversation locally. We want to take the opportunity today to reassure you that the support we provided to coaches in terms of safe practice. So Ali will take you through that. Luke will talk to you about managing court access and some support we have in terms of technology to manage bookings of courts. We also have some gate access systems that could be utilised in terms of the bigger picture, and that would also require investment we could work together on. So that's a longer term process and outcome. But we'll just talk to you around court access and some options you have to open courts safely. And then at the end, we'll just finish with a Q&A session that we'll throw open to you to ask any questions for us to have a discussion. Feel free to use the chat function. We're not going to answer questions on the chat function as we go along. We'll save those to the end, as it's a relatively small group and we pretty much know each other. So, but please feel free to use the chat function if something pops in your head on the way through, and we'll try and answer that at the end. I guess I must just stress as well, if we don't have the answer to something, then I apologise. We'll take it away and try and seek the right answer for you. I think it's important that we don't give you the wrong answer or a part answer. So if there is something we can't answer, then we'll be honest to say we can't, and we'll take that away and try and provide a response as soon as we can. So that's it from me to start with. I'm going to hand over to Simon, who's just going to take you through opening up tennis.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for dialing in. And it's an interesting opportunity and an interesting time for us in that, on the international level, international tennis has come to a halt, and sponsorship and Wimbledon and the commercial opportunity linked to our sport is looking very different. But at a recreational level, what we've seen in England and what we're now seeing in Scotland is a resurgence in just casual, normal participation, families playing with their kids and people playing with friends and next door neighbours. So we think there's a real opportunity here to work together, and it's quite timely in that last year we took a year out to really review the sport and develop our new strategy in line with the new Sport Wales strategy, the new LTA strategy, really referencing back to the Future Generations Act. And I think one of the things that came across loud and clear was that, our vision now to open tennis up is the right one. Everyone stands behind and sees tennis as a great sport and something that can be accessible. And the mission that we've set ourselves is to grow tennis by making it relevant, accessible, welcoming, and enjoyable. And that needs to happen right the way across Wales. It's not a Cardiff thing. It's not an affluent postcode thing. The beauty of our sport is that we do have 1,200 tennis courts across all 22 local authority areas, with a range of different types of facilities, from indoor facilities and David Lloyd clubs, right the way down to clubs. And actually a third of all tennis courts are owned and operated by yourselves as local authorities. I think the big thing we've taken out of our strategy review last year was to say, look, over the last 10 years, we've probably neglected the relationship with local authorities. And actually, it's quite common now that you go around some beautiful destination park sites across Wales, and tennis is the poor relation. Public park tennis courts that are in really poor condition, they're not maintained, they don't have a structure, they're not supported. You as local authority partners aren't supported. It's something we're very keen to flip on its head and to invest our time, resources, revenue, capital into working with local authorities to establish really vibrant park sites. And we know things like Parkrun have been a success, bringing people together in local communities in public parks. We'd like to create something similar for tennis and make, tennis courts really beneficial assets for local authority portfolios. So this is very much the start of that journey. It's fortunate and unfortunate, I think, in reflection that it's COVID-19 that's forced us to all come together to talk about these things today. But I would hope moving forward that this is the start of a new relationship where you do see Tennis Wales wanting to partner with all 22 local authorities, because we have aspirations to develop community tennis in public parks, using the latest technology, investment into your facilities. And on top of that, we've also got an aspiration to look at sites for new indoor courts. And again, we've already done a gap analysis now that's identified 12 geographic locations across Wales where we would like to work with local authority partners, schools, colleges, universities, to develop, modern, fit-for-purpose indoor tennis facilities that can really benefit the communities that live around them. So for us, it's really exciting that the strategy means we can work far closer with local authorities, and our board and the LTA have both acknowledged the need to invest more into local authority partnerships. Hopefully that's good news for you, that you see tennis coming to the table now with resources. It saddens me to see how many derelict or underutilized park courts there are in local communities. we see now as an opportunity to bring those back to life. And again, as James said, there isn't a one size fits all with this. Every local authority operates slightly differently, either politically. Some have leisure operators, some manage sports facilities in-house, some have got money to reinvest, some haven't. We know it's not a level playing field, but our commitment is very much to work with you all over the next couple of years, starting now with obviously a return to tennis, and then hopefully building a really great partnership that brings tennis back to life in your local authority area. So do talk to us, do use us. We are a resource that wants to be utilised. We're not just here to service our traditional tennis clubs and tennis club members. We want to work with a third of all tennis courts, as I say, belonging to local authorities. So to open up that conversation would be great for us. And the final bit before I hand back to the team is just to say, we've put quite a lot of pressure on the Welsh Government to open tennis back up. We think it can be played very comfortably with social distancing in place. And the legislation change we've asked for doesn't mean that all tennis courts need to open next Monday. We are very pragmatic. We want this to be a collaborative way of working. We acknowledge that some of our clubs and traditional tennis venues can open straight away, whilst absolutely parks, some of the leisure centre facilities may take weeks and months to come back into action. So we don't want you to think there's any pressure from us to open your facilities prematurely. We'll absolutely work on a case-by-case basis with all 22 local authorities on the right plan for you and provide whatever resources and information and guidance we can to get you back playing when you think the time is right. So I think, the work we've done so far has gone through the Welsh Sports Association. We have been in sort of regular contact with Sport Wales. We've now reached a point where all of our guidance has gone forward to Welsh Government for the paper that's being reviewed tomorrow. So fingers crossed from our perspective. And we're hoping from Friday to have an announcement. And hopefully on the back of the webinar today, you'll be far clearer to think about, okay, if we do open our public park courts, here's some of the key things we should be thinking about and the resources we can access from Tennis Wales to make sure they are safe and accessible to do so for COVID-19. So hopefully this isn't the last time we'll see you all on a webinar together. I'd like this to become a regular occurrence where we're working together and talking to each other. But just a real thank you really, because I appreciate local authorities have a huge amount on their plate at the moment, juggling a public health crisis as well as maintaining statutory services, of which sport isn't one. So to have you all on the call today shows that you do want to work with us. And yeah, we're really appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Simon, I believe, has got to shoot off the call in a short while for other commitments. So if anyone wants connecting with Simon, then I'm happy to do that after the session for further conversations as well. I'm going to hand over to Pam Griffiths, our participation development partner. Pam's going to take you through our guidance around return to play and doing that safely. I'll hand over to Pam.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Just some guidance on the return to restricted play, and a lot of this has been shared with our club venues across the country, and will also be practical advice for you to reopen park courts. So all venues have been advised around minimising the risk of infection and transmission, and they have been advised to do a thorough risk assessment as appropriate and put appropriate measures in place to ensure participants, staff, volunteers are protected. Risk assessment templates for tennis have been available on our COVID-19 section of the website, and venues have all been directed to these links. We're also advised them to obviously keep up to date with Welsh Government measures, and it will progress and be readdressed as and when the different phases are lifted. All venues have been advised that they need to keep constant guidance regarding health, travel and social distance and hygiene at all times, and any measures put in place by venues to enable tennis to resume need to be capable of being flexed or changed and measures are reintroduced in the future. In terms of facilities, at this point in time only outdoor courts should be open, with indoor and bubble courts remaining closed. Some advice around the nets. Nets should be maintained at the appropriate height to avoid players having to adjust them. So if you do have net winders, we advise that they are removed. Also to remove any unnecessary equipment and items from the courts, i.e. benches and bins, to minimise touch points. Court access. Ensure measures are in place to minimise encounters between people, including car parks and entrances. Where safe and appropriate, doors, court gates should be left open during play-in hours where gate access systems aren't used. And again, this is to minimise those touch points. Consider different entry, exit points at court venues where possible, and ensure this is clearly marked. and consider marking 2-metre distances at appropriate points, such as the entry to the court, so we can sort of maintain some of that social distancing. In terms of communication, you can see that the infographic, once the guidelines have been confirmed on Friday, this will be available to everybody, and all venues will be sort of promoted to promote to their players and users. We will provide you with a guidance on safe return to tennis and the bank of infographics. And we would be sort of grateful if you consider sharing via your social media and communication channels as appropriate. And all information will be provided bilingually for you to utilise on court if you wish to do so. Following the session today, we're going to provide a link to the webinar that we did with our venues, so you can see the full guidance in terms of clubhouses and other social spaces that we've given. But we'll also give you the link to the COVID-19 area. This site is going to be useful all the way through because there'll be updated guidance always published on there in line with Welsh Government changes.
Okay, thanks, Pam. So I'm hoping people can hear me. I've been muted. So what? Yes, you can. Great. Okay, so Pam's just giving you a quick overview of the court guidance that we've put forward to Welsh Government. You'll receive that on Friday, hopefully when we reopen, but it's aligned to what's already on the LTA website in terms of England and Scotland. So the broad principles are the same. There will be some differences. So if you want to have a more detailed look, you'll pop on the LTA website just to get a feel for that. We obviously won't be going to group coaching, which we'll touch on now. We are putting forward that we recommended a one-to-one coaching scenario, which would be in line with current Welsh Government guidance on meeting one family outside the household. We can take some questions at the end. But just to move things on, Ellie is now just going to take you through the information we provided to coaching in terms of that one-to-one coaching advice and how that can be done safely. Again, this is more probably just for information, but there may be an opportunity further down the line where some of our coaches' workforce would want to access park court. So it's important that you're up to speed on this and aware of what we've provided to our coaches. Ellie, over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to take you through the coaches' guidance. Coaches may look to use local authority courts for one-to-one lessons in the future. This guidance, as Jamie said, has been submitted to Welsh Assembly Government and also provided to all our coaches in preparation for a green light, hopefully in the near future. So in terms of communication, just some information we've passed on. Coaches should liaise with local authorities to ensure an agreed approach to activity that is feasible to deliver safely. And coaches should communicate with their customers clearly and regularly, making them aware in advance of the measures they are putting in place for sessions and guidelines players should be following when attending. It's important to note that any measures coaches put in place to enable tennis activity to resume need to be capable of being flexed or changed quickly if tighter movement, social distancing is reintroduced in the future or when the restrictions are further relaxed. In terms of court limits, coaching sessions should be limited to one-to-one coaching activity only, and on the maintaining social distancing, coaches should position themselves obviously on the other side of the net and use adaptation to drills and obviously provide feedback instruction in a manner that's used to ensure social distancing guidelines can be safely adhered to. On the equipment front, they should be using new or fresh balls where possible for each lesson. To facilitate this, coaches need to consider using less balls per lesson, 1 to 2 cans, or using live ball exercises rather than basket feeding. The balls that are stored need to be stored for 72 hours before they can be reused. It's advised that coaches should be the only person to touch the tennis balls, and players need to use their feet and racket to return them. Where players need to handle tennis balls, for example, doing some serve practice, it's advised that they should bring their own clearly marked tennis balls that only they can touch. Players should bring their own equipment. Is it advised not to allow racket sharing or use of communal rackets? Use of coaching equipment, for example, cones, should be limited, with any equipment used should be cleaned and wiped down afterwards. Ensure all equipment is removed from the court at the end of the session. In terms of health, safety and hygiene, the coaches need to ensure usual access to first aid and emergency equipment is maintained. We have directed coaches to the St John's Ambulance website for specific COVID guidance for the current climate. In terms of booking and payments, operate online booking for coaching sessions where at all possible, or alternatively phone bookings. Implement a short buffer period, for example, 10 minutes between session booking slots, or finish sessions slightly earlier to allow time for players to leave before the next players arrive. Take payments online and avoid handling cash. And when it comes to coaching young children, the same guidance applies as for coaching adults. The only information is around red court, which is mini tennis red, which is under 8s, which can be done on half of a big court with a zig net and softer balls, just to make sure that they're maintaining social distancing. So the other point was parents and guardians should be in attendance, but limited to one parent or guardian per child where possible, with social distancing strictly observed while watching the session. The other information just to give is we've also given guidance to coaching on risk assessments. They should be conducting their own risk assessments. All activities should be consistent with the government guidance regarding health, travel, social distancing and hygiene at all times. Coaches and coaching and organisations must consider safety first, particularly minimising the risk of infection and transmission. A thorough risk assessment should be undertaken and appropriate measures put in place to ensure participants and coaches are protected. That's a bit of a whistle-stop tour for me on the coaching information that we've been provided.
Great, thanks Ellie, thanks for that. So just wanted to give you an overview of what we provided to coaches, as Ellie said there. As Pam touched on, we have run a similar webinar with our tennis clubs and coaches. So that will be available for you to view via a newsletter tomorrow if you wish to do so, so you can see the actual information given to them, which is probably the same as this. And then we've also done a detailed question and answer session off the back of that webinar and some follow-up Q&As we've done this week with indoor centres, clubs and coaches. So again, I'm perfectly happy to share that question and answer with you as local authorities, as some of the questions will be relevant to parks and leisure courts that you operate. The next area we're going to move on to is around court access and managing court access. Now, as mentioned a couple of times already, we do recognise that access to park courts is going to be challenging and may be a situation where local authorities feel they cannot open courts at this point in time because of people gathering, young people congregating around areas such as courts and play areas. So we recognise that's a concern and we're completely respectful to the decision that you'll need to make, but we're happy to discuss that with you if you want further help, advice and support. But Luke's just going to talk you through now some of the managing court access support that we can provide in terms of physical systems to secure courts, and then also online booking systems that would be available to you if you're interested to manage the flow of access to courts. There are some advantages to that in terms of pay and play and generating income if you wanted to go down that route, but also in addition, those management and booking systems can be provided free of charge in terms of court access. So maintaining that free access in terms of parks can also be maintained. So just some information for you on that to go away and think about. And we will be running an additional webinar, Luke and I, next week for local authorities who maybe want to talk to us more about managing court access. But I'll hand over to Luke.
Thanks, Jamie. Good afternoon, everyone. So, yeah, I'm just going to run through some of the technology available that our venues can access, but also park sites that might be particularly useful for local authorities to consider, particularly with the reopening of tennis courts, hopefully for next week. So we're going to look at why having an online booking system is particularly important at this time. Why is it a great opportunity currently for park sites? What Club Spark can do, because it's not just a booking module, there's a wider range of things as well. And then the different types of court access options that we know out there that are available to consider. Okay, so why is having an online booking system important? Well, clearly it'll help people to manage court usage effectively online with social distancing measures in place to avoid crowding at your courts. For example, what we don't want to obviously happen is have situations where you may get 30, 40 people rocking up at park tennis courts, and then you've got a real problem managing the social distancing. Hence why having an online booking system, even if the bookings are going to be free of charge, the public access, that's absolutely fine. But if we can install a booking system, it'll enable you to be able to control the usage of those courts. It also improves the customer journey from home to the tennis court. We anticipate a spike in online booking courts throughout Club Spark. This is some evidence we've already got from England and Scotland, where as soon as they reopened their tennis courts, there were venues at 100% occupancy. They were rammed with tennis court bookings on a regular basis. People are clearly desperate to get outside, play some tennis, obviously, well, the weather's been nice as well. There's the opportunity that Jamie mentioned to introduce pay and play at your courts to generate revenue. And one of the big benefits is that sites, whether it's parks or clubs, can customise the online booking system to suit the needs with flexible scheduling and setting booking rules for all different types of users, whether that would be paid subscribers, pay and play users, or free access users as well. Move on, Pam. Also important that tennis courts will need to operate an online booking system where at all possible, or alternatively a phone booking system to manage the social distancing and crowding. Ideally, an online system will make it a lot more easier and accessible for people to use. And one of the most important things as well is that we're really advocating as part of the guidance that venues need to implement a buffer period. For example, you could have within your booking confirmation, you can set a notification which alerts users to say that we need you to leave the courts 10 minutes prior to the end of your booking to enable the safe transition of people leaving the court and new players arriving to enter the court. There's also the functionality to stagger the bookings, which will enable you to put a setting in place where not every booking will start at the same time. So people will have different start and end points. So you're not having lots of people arriving and finishing at the same time. And of course, ClubSpark will allow you to take online payments as well to avoid the issue of handling cash payments. So why is this also a great opportunity for parks in Wales? Feedback is from parks across the UK that are currently operating is that it makes it far more easier to manage your courts. There's a track and trace system in there. You look at all the statistics in terms of court utilisation, how many people are booking your courts, what times they're booking your courts, etc. Parks are also feeding back a huge increase in pay and play bookings. Some parks have been operating 100% occupancy, and we were having a call with the parks manager for the LTA yesterday, and he told us that some park sites have been generating over £1,000 a week from just pay and play bookings. So that does also emphasise, a consideration there. If you want to potentially look at in the future having a pay and play system, it can certainly help you generate revenue, which can then develop a sinking fund to help safeguard those tennis courts in the future and potentially use that revenue to resurface tennis courts, when they obviously need doing in the future. And the evidence as well with the system is that it clearly works for the customer. It's an easy process. They can go online via a park's website, which we hooked up through ClubSpark. They can access it through their mobile device. And with a click of 3 or 4 buttons, they book a court, they pick their slot, they get the confirmation, and they just turn up and play at your courts. You can move on, Pam, thanks. So as I said, it's not just a booking module as well. ClubSpark operates as a website. So you could have a local authority park's website, which you can operate multiple venues from the same website. You can manage coaching programs. So if you're offering sessions, you can have that on the website too, where users will come in, book their places on the courses, they make the payments online, booking confirmations are sent out. There's a complete membership management module in there. So again, if you were a parks venue that wanted to offer maybe low-cost family subscriptions, you can manage that within the system. People can buy it through the website. Again, payments are all through GoCardless and Stripe. And you can contact members within your database within ClubSpark too. So it really is a full resource of managing a venue, whether it's a park or a typical traditional club venue as well. There's the reporting tools, so all the analysis that comes with it in terms of how many courts are being booked, by who, usability, etc., which is really useful. And then, of course, the bits that I've been commenting on, so the court booking system, which is very flexible. You can set that up to whatever you want it to be. You can put your own rules in, how many courts can people book in a certain window. So you could say, for example, no more than 3 bookings in a week, or you can decide who can view the calendar, whether it's just pay and play users or whether you want it open to the general public, etc. as well. So there's a lot of benefits of using the ClubSpark system outside of the court booking module as well. And finally, obviously the access to the courts is the key consideration here, because we're very conscious that should courts be able to get open next week, that a lot of local authorities will currently have their park courts open for free access. So there's 2 different models that we see sites generally utilise. So on the left-hand side is the high-tech LTA gate access option. If you wanted to consider this, get in touch with us after the meeting and we can certainly look at that. But this functionality basically works through ClubSpark, where people book their court, they get sent a 4-digit code, which they turn up at the venue, enter the code, and it opens up the gate. It also can connect to floodlights too, so during the winter period, it will automatically turn on lights 10 minutes before and turn off 10 minutes after bookings as well. So yeah, it's quite an expensive option, but it's the best solution that we currently have available for people to use. Then, of course, if you wanted to operate a free court access system but wanted to control the bookings, you can do it through a padlock system as well. So Yes, it's not as secure as using the gate access system, the high-tech spec version, and you would need to change the codes regularly. I mean, we would recommend at least on a weekly basis. But what you can do with this is within the booking confirmation section within ClubSpark is when the person gets the confirmation of their court booking, you can stipulate that when you enter the courts, please enter the 4-digit or 6-digit code that you enter as the code to obviously enter those courts. So just a few things to consider, obviously, with that, but there are ways and available to do this. And if you are interested in using the ClubSpark module, particularly for the booking module in the first instance, whether that's for free courts or for pay and play and offering subscriptions to generate income, please just get in touch with us and we can certainly have those discussions with you. That's me. So we'll also be having a webinar as well. Me and Jamie will be running this next week, which we're just going to confirm after this meeting. So we will send out an invitation following this meeting to that webinar, but this will delve into a bit more detail of what the actual booking process looks like, so you can get a bit of a flavour for that. And I'll go through some of the settings and functionality within the system that you can completely customise as well. So if you are interested in that, then do come along to the webinar next week. It'll be useful just to give you a bit of an overview of how it works.
Thanks, Luke, for that. Appreciate that. Luke, just quickly, how would, I know we will cover this at the webinar next week, but how would a local authority go about signing up for ClubSpark and what's required of them to do so?
So they would need to get in touch with us, and we could arrange for a temporary registration membership created with the LTA, because the LTA will set up access to the ClubSpark platform. That would be free of charge initially as a temporary member, so we could get that set up initially. So do get in touch with us if that's something that you want to obviously look at, and we can get the wheels in motion for you.
Thanks, Luke. Just to give you a bit of insight there, we've been discussing with Newport Live the reopening of their courts at the Newport Tennis Centre on the Sports Village, and they're very keen on a padlock system as a short-term solution. They had originally identified a solution of having to have a member of staff, which is easier for them because the courts are adjacent to a leisure facility, of course, but a member of staff to maybe police courts, but having a padlock system with online booking may well remove that requirement, and then it's more a case of just managing a cleaning rota around the padlock, etc., because it's a touch point in terms of many people in terms of access to the courts. I'm conscious we've chucked quite a bit of information at you. Apologies for that, but hopefully it's been useful and insightful. As I said, we'll provide that all post session as well. What I'd like to do now is, there's no questions in the chat currently, so that either means we've done a good job of answering some questions you may have, or we've just not done a very good job at all. So we'll soon find out, but just wanted to throw it open for any questions or discussion points you have now, and we'll aim to support you with those and provide a response. Pam, I just wonder if you just take the slides off for a minute so we can see more people and we can pop them back up to finish off in a minute. Is that okay? There we go. Okay, so conscious it may become a little bit of a free-for-all in terms of people talking over each other, but please feel free to ask any questions you have.
Jamie, thank you very much for you and your team. Great job. Plenty of information there. I think for us in Cardiff, it's just a case of how we use resources to open and shut selected courts, or the majority of the courts. We've got a lot of youth annoyance issues at the moment. That's probably a major concern. Equally, the club's Spark booking system, great. Love to take advantage of a coded gate, but I think that comes down to expenditure, and what's out there in the form of any funding. Mm-hmm. Equally, the right sites to do that on. But yeah, my main concern, I think, at the moment is, who opens and shuts. If it's a manual situation, a lot of our staff are on furlough leave, redeployment, shielding, and we're very limited to who can go and do what at the moment. So opening and shutting courts every day is problematic in theory. That's just some of my first thoughts. Thank you again, though, for you and your team, and yeah, happy to keep involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. That's fine. I mean, I think we completely respect that, given the situation. Many of you will know I've just come from Bridgend to Tennis Wales, so I was very much involved with the COVID-19 response and doing some tasks I never thought I would have been doing at the start of the year. So completely understand the situation that you find yourselves in terms of the workforce and its deployment. So I think I would just reiterate, Adam, that if you feel that courts can't be opened or only certain courts could be opened, then that's fine. We fully respect that position. I think, talking about Cardiff specifically for a second, we have the Heath Park site that we manage currently in terms of Tennis Wales in the Park, and we're obviously already talking to the council about Hayley Park and Victoria Park as well. So it may be that, working with you, we just drive tennis participation to those 3 sites in the first instance. So that would be fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pick up an off-record conversation around that after the webinar.
That's great. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else from anyone? No, everyone's happy?
Sorry.
Go on. No? Okay. That's fine. We'll move on then. Please feel free, if there are any questions or queries that come up after you receive the information, then please don't hesitate to get in touch, and I will provide some information at the end around who to contact and how to do that. Pam, do you want to just pop the slides back up for me? I've just seen a question come in from Neil. Okay, so staffing will be an issue for Conway, have furloughed a percentage of their staff, and a number of staff have been redeployed. Yeah, so again, that's just my point really to Adam. I completely understand that and respect that. I think let's just keep the dialogue open if we can, Neil, in terms of working together at a point in time when part of courts could be potentially open. But again, we're fully respectful of that situation. Pam, do you just want to move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so in terms of next steps, just to finish off, obviously the Welsh Government lockdown review is tomorrow, with the announcement by Mark Drakeford on Friday at 12:30. We remain hopeful, and I wouldn't say expectant because that's going to stitch us up, I guess, but we remain hopeful that tennis courts may well open alongside other sport facilities on Friday. We shall see. Once we have the final position on that, we will share the finalised infographics that you saw briefly when Pam talked earlier around safe court access. And we'll do that as soon as we practically can. If there are any changes that need to be made, we'll have to do those first very, very quickly and get them to you. If not, those can come out very quickly. There also will be on the LTA website, and we can provide that link to you as well. So you can look there straight away rather than waiting for comms from us. There will also be more detailed information on there in terms of participants, coaches and venues in terms of Word documents. So that information will be available on the LTA website. What we'd like to do, if it's okay, and again we'll provide more information post this session, but we'd like to work with local authorities where you feel you can open courts to have an open kind of communication dialogue with you. And if it is that you can open certain sites, or you can open all sites, then please let us know that, and we'll look to publicise that fact for you if you wish for us to do so via our own communications channels and support that information. And again, on the flip side, again, I recognise some courts may remain closed, and if it is that you want us to assist with communicating that message so that we enable tennis to be undertaken safely, we don't create people gathering at courts, and again, we can communicate that courts aren't open in your area, that's fine. So please do just talk to us about that. We want to work with you, that spirit of partnership working. You'll receive a follow-up email from us probably tomorrow with the information I've already mentioned, a recording of this webinar for other colleagues to view, and other local authorities will share that with as well. And there'll also be a booking process for next Friday's Managing Court Access webinar with Luke and I, where we can take you through a little bit more detail in terms of that court access system. Adam's point around the costs, I didn't pick that one up. I mean, it's bespoke based on the courts and the situation in terms of the gate access, but the gate is around 5 to 7K, I believe, And there are other costs around access in terms of electricity access, etc. And there is potentially grant funding available depending on a penetration rate the LTA calculate. If you meet that, then grant funding is available for those. And then secondly, if you don't meet the gate penetration rate, there is a business case approach. There is a business case approach whereby you can make a case for funding the LTA will consider. But that's much more information and detail that we could pick up in a one-to-one conversation post this meeting. And then the last thing for me to say is please just stay in touch and contact us for any further information and support guidance that you need. Pam, just the last slide, please. Okay, Gary, you want to ask a question? No, okay. Okay, no problem. Okay, so in terms of further support, here's the contact details of key people. There's myself there at the top in terms of email. Please get in touch if there's anything we've not covered or any area we're not providing support you want information on. Luke is the go-to person for queries on court access and booking systems. Just for the purposes of reopening, Pam will just deal with and will support as and where required, just in terms of general support, any queries on the physical opening of courts and doing that safely. And then Ellie is the go-to person in terms of workforce queries, in terms of coaching, volunteering, etc. And we also have Mark, who I should mention, and I've missed him off the list, not deliberately, but Mark leads on our competitions, which is less of a factor for past tennis courts, but Mark is also available for any queries around competitions, and his email address is mark.lewis@tenniswales.org.uk. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've been about 50 minutes, which is pretty good. We were about an hour and a half with the clubs and the venues and the coaches last week, so we've got a little bit more efficient. So thank you very much for your time. And if you do have any more queries, questions, then please feel free to get in touch. I'm happy to stay on for 5-10 minutes if anyone wants to just ask some questions as well. But that's us done, and thanks a lot for attending. Speak to you soon.